President Biden's visit to Maui. Nearly 2 weeks after those historic and devastating wildfires that ripped through the town of Lahaina, killed 114 people, hundreds more missing. The president stuck around on the scorched island for just about 6 hours. And the visit came in the middle of his luxurious vacation at a billionaire's Lake Tahoe mansion. That was his second vacation in a month. Nearly 40% of his presidency spent on vacation. But President Biden's arrival in Maui was anything but welcome. Angry residents took to the streets outside the airport to protest the presidential motorcade, with some holding signs reading, "You're late," and others chanting, "Go home, Joe." President Biden then toured the destruction in Lahaina. He saw firsthand the destroyed homes and scorched streets, and he spoke with some community members who had just lost everything. But just moments later, the president took to the podium, and listen to this. He compared the deadliest wildfire in U.S. history to a kitchen fire in Delaware.
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake. It's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat.
You know, Harris, it doesn't take much to realize there's no comparison here. He didn't almost lose his wife, his Corvette, and his cat because the local fire department, they said it could be considered an insignificant fire. The local fire chief told the Associated Press, luckily we got it pretty early. The fire was under control in 20 minutes. I'm not sure the people of Lahaina could say the same with hundreds missing.
Well, and I read at one point they told them to vent the windows, so, you know, that would help the process, and that it was completely contained to the kitchen. So thank the good Lord for that. But I mean, we are looking at a pathological narcissist at this point. Like, no one thinks that anything about what he went through in that incident with a small kitchen fire is anything like the inferno conditions that literally incinerated people on the island of Maui. Within seconds. We still don't know where more than 800 people are at this point. Now, look, later in the conversation, he did go on to compare his loss from his wife and children earlier in his life, and how at first he thought both of his sons were gone, but he found out that his two sons had survived and what that was like. And I can get it. But coupled with the other, I mean, you're always given, you know, A grade and Z grade. Like, you never just get a consoler-in-chief who can give you A grade all the time. Now, my guest last hour asked a great question. Why didn't he pick up Obama, who was born on the island in the state of Hawaii, and they both could have gone on Air Force One? I just don't think he's thinking these things through. And who is on his staff who lets him then board a flight after Democrats have eviscerated people like Trump and other Republicans for not being president in the moment when things happen? You know, oh, look at Katrina, look at this. Let him board a flight to go back to an $18 million mansion of a donor in Lake Tahoe. I mean, he's not just the only one. He's surrounded by a group of the world's only living heart donors.
Well, listen, you know, my heart breaks for all these victims. It was important for the president to go. I think the timing, you can talk about the timing issue and things like that. But I think to Harris's point, this president is best when he is consoling. And when he sticks to the conversation about losing his wife and his daughter in that tragic accident.
I said he's not at his best because he can't do that.
But I think when he focuses on...
So one story out of an entire 5-hour visit is an embarrassment. These people are really suffering.
They are absolutely suffering. And I think he was trying to console them to the best that he could. And when he talks about...
He's got to do better.
About losing his son, when he talks about losing his first wife, I think that resonates with people. And that's what Joe Biden has been known for over the last 50 years.
Carly, sometimes you just say, I feel your pain. Yeah. You don't compare stories that have no analogy whatsoever.
And such a powerful moment from that Gold Star mom there. You know, I want to focus on President Biden just a little bit because I think the people on Maui deserve a lot more attention. And that's really the issue here is is they're just not getting enough. If this fire ripped through a town on Long Island and New Yorkers were forced to get in their cars and drive to the beach and jump into the Atlantic Ocean to save their lives, it would be around-the-clock news coverage. And the President of the United States certainly wouldn't dip into the disaster zone 13 days later for just a few hours only to return to his regularly scheduled vacation. And that is what just happened. When there are an untold number of Americans and children who've died, some of them in the most horrific way possible. And like Kara said, there are still over 800 people missing, which means that there are thousands of Americans waking up every morning wondering where the love of their life is, or their mom, or their child. Why is that taking so long to figure out? And then there are also all these questions, like this official in Hawaii who may have waited 5 hours to release water. If he had released it sooner, could more lives have been saved? That's a really big story. So this is still about the people, not the president. And I think that is where he made a mistake. I understand what he's trying to do to inject himself into the story as a way of saying, I understand where you're coming from. But when it is a lesser tragedy like a kitchen fire, it just doesn't compare. And one last thing, if I could just have one moment more, because I think that this is the most attention the story will ever get, and it's still not enough. I spoke to a resident of Maui who said what he needs the most is we need to fast track permits, clean up the area, hire a ton of architects who can start drawing up options for housing. I don't know what level of government is responsible for that, but they're saying that needs to happen now.
Yeah, it does need to happen now. And you wonder how engaged the president is from that billionaire mansion in Lake Tahoe. You know, Kara, the reason the president gets away with this, because you just compare how he acted, which Carly so eloquently described, to George W. Bush, to Trump and natural disasters and the coverage they got. He gets away with it because of the media. The Washington Post, in an article that was reflective on the missteps of the president, it still went on to say this: he's uniquely adept at leading with empathy amid tragedies like this one. His long-standing image as an empathetic leader was a rare period of public dispassion from Biden. They cover for him when what he did was totally unexcusable.
Exactly. And, you know, if he led with empathy, but he also led with truth, that would be different. But, you know, he tends to exaggerate. And there is a natural human inclination to filter your experience of the world from yourself. So have I experienced something like this? How do I identify with that? He just, that's on steroids for him. And there's the exaggeration component, as we talked about. But I think this also reflects the fact that he's gravely out of touch. Yes, he took a break between vacations to do this. That's great. But he's doing this at the same time that he's requesting hundreds of billions of dollars in aid from the American people to Ukraine. We did analysis. $900 per American is going to go to Ukraine from those hundreds of billions of dollars. $700 per household in Hawaii. Look at that.
Which is not even enough to cover inflation, because that's $709 a month. So
It actually
take that into consideration.
came up when some of our people on the ground were interviewing the victims in Hawaii. They mentioned that. Imagine how different it would be if President Biden had said, you know what, I'm not going to get on that plane yet. We've got work to do on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm staying right here.
Yep, put the work in. But the media lets him get away with it, and here we are.